John Pyron did a fabulous time with Sterling a couple weeks ago, and some of the agents let me know how they were inspired by it. And I talked with him, and he said that he would come. So John, I'll turn the meeting over to you.
Fantastic, thank you. Awesome. Let me grab my drink here. Here we are. We got one more day, and the Warriors are gonna be back in the finals. So, how many of you are Warriors fans? How many of you are not gonna raise your hand no matter what I ask? Okay, fantastic. So let me get a pulse of the room before I get started. So how many of you have been in real estate for more than 10 years? Okay, how many of you are in the Masters Club? Well, we're gonna solve that problem today. All right, so before I get started, let me share with you a quick story. So back in the late 1800s, there was this preacher that used to travel from town to town all throughout the Midwest, and he would give these amazing speeches, and he became very, very famous and popular, and each town just got bigger and bigger and bigger as he would give these talks, until he came to this one town. Nothing was different. Went out a couple of days ahead of time, passed out flyers, invited people to come see this amazing speech on Sunday afternoon at 12 p.m. Sunday at 12 p.m. comes around and nobody was there. 12:05, nobody was there. And finally around 12:15, this cowboy comes riding down on his horse, and he hitches his horse to the stake there and comes in and sits down in the front row and is ready to hear the amazing speech. Preacher's beside himself. He didn't know what's going on. This has never happened before. So he goes, cowboy, comes with the cowboy. I've never had this happen. What do I do? Cowboy shrugs his shoulders and says, I don't know. I'm just a cowboy. But I'll tell you this, if I went out to feed my herd and only one showed up, I would feed it. Preacher said, you're absolutely right. Runs back up on stage, and for the next hour and a half gives one of the most amazing speeches he's ever given in his entire life. I mean, he's sweating, breathing heavy, comes running off the stage, going, cowboy, oh my God, that was the best I've ever done. What did you think? Cowboy, looking exhausted, shrugs his shoulders, says, I don't know, man, I'm just a cowboy. But I tell you this, if I went out to feed my herd and only one showed up, I would feed it, but I wouldn't dump the whole load on it, okay? And so I'm not gonna dump the whole load on you here today. It's my understanding that almost all of you in here, and if you're not there, you will be because of association, are heavy hitters in this business, that you are selling homes. You're not like the average realtor. And that's the reason I came down. Is association, I've learned over the last 28 years of building businesses, has probably been the biggest differentiator in my success and the success of others that I've consulted. So there's always three questions when I'm talking to an audience that's never heard me speak. Number one is, who is this dude? Number two, why do I care about what he's about to tell me? And number three, what's in it for me? Now, are those fair questions? Yep. Right? Okay. Let me see if I can share with you a little bit about my background and explain those three things right now. Now, what's interesting is I had an opportunity, my client invited me to the A's game yesterday and had these cool seats, and as I'm driving down, I'm driving through East Oakland. I purposely detoured, got off at Fruitvale, went down to it used to be East 14th, now I think it's International Drive, right? And the thing we didn't have back in 1987, in April 1987, when I was heavy into drugs, dropped out of high school at 11 years old, and was literally living on those streets, we didn't have Facebook Live. I fired up Facebook Live, I'm like, wait, this is where it all started, right? So at 38th Avenue and East 14th Street, there was an auto parts store that's now whatever, right? And we lived up above there, and so I'm videotaping this whole thing, and then I come down to 40th Avenue and I turn right, and it's this keynote I've been delivering, 15 years with the photo of this house, and it was very powerful to go down that street and put the actual camera on that house where I was living homeless behind that house. And then I kept going down the street, and I crossed the one street there, and I came to the right. I'm like, that's where I used to cop drugs, you know? And you know, I was driving down San Leandro Boulevard on the way to the Coliseum, and just explained to these people, it's like, I went from being homeless to building multi-million-dollar business, 3 of them back to back. One of them, while the economy was collapsing, ended up in the center page of the Sacramento Business Journal. And I'm sharing on that Facebook Live feed, I'm like, I'm giving a talk in Antioch tomorrow, and part of my story is, you know what, it doesn't matter where you've come from. It doesn't matter what has happened to you in the past, whether you filed bankruptcy, divorced, dropped out of high school, homeless, you know, had a bad childhood. It doesn't really matter. Every single one of us woke up this morning and we're vertical. Some people didn't wake up and they're now horizontal. And one of the things that I've learned is that as long as you wake up in the morning, you have an opportunity to make a decision that can literally change your life. And so, and as I'm telling this story, it's up on Facebook Live, so go look it's up there. I'm getting emotional about it because I realized, you know what? There was no way I would be standing right here in front of you talking today had a certain person not come into my life at the time they came into my life. July 21st, 1987 at 12:35 in the afternoon, to be exact. A drunk guy got me off of drugs. You know, I would have not listened to anybody else. But that one moment in time, because had he not stopped me, I was heading down to the railroad tracks there to put a bullet in my head. So you don't know what is going to change your life. I will tell you this. Out of 7.4 billion people on this planet, you're the only one that has these fingerprints. Okay? If we were to actually prick your finger or your arm and take it down to the local hospital and they were to run a DNA test, I guarantee you, out of 7.4 billion people on this planet, no one has your DNA. How many of you would agree with what I'm just saying, right? And so what we're going to talk about here today is I'm not going to waste your time on stuff that is not going to, that you can't take action on. The other thing is that I'm not going to do is I'm not going to pitch you on anything at the end. Okay? This allows me to be raw, real, and to the point. Because if I can have you walk out of that door with something new that you can take action on and literally just go in your business, it's worth my time. Now, I will ask for you one thing. Connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you feel like you got something out of this talk today, I want you to go on there and hit recommend and write me a recommendation on what my talk did for you. That's what you can do for me. But right now I'm going to talk to you about 3 ways to increase your results. Now there are 1,000 ways to increase your results. But I'm going to talk about 3 specifically. Number 1 has to do with the inner game, which has to do with your mindset. Number 2 has to do with systems, which is your outer game. And number 3, you can have the best mindset on the planet. You can have the greatest systems in place, but the bottom line is if you can't get your butt to take action, none of it matters. Who in here knows who Darren Hardy is? Wrote the book, The Compound Effect. Okay? If you're in real estate and you've not read the book Compound Effect, that should be the first book you go get. If you really want to take your real estate business, because we all understand that we're in real estate, so we are a business, right? If you want to take your real estate business and times that by 10 over the next 12, 24 months, get that book and do exactly what it says. And the meeting's over. I don't really need to even talk, right? But what's interesting is he's the author, used to be the publisher of Success Magazine. He's one of the few people living today that has interviewed every single successful person on the planet, right? Richard Branson, Bill Gates, you name the person, he's interviewed them. And now he's got a thing called Darren Daily, and I'm recording this, hopefully he doesn't get ticked at me. But he has this thing called Darren Daily. Go to darrendaily.com. It's a free thing that comes out every single morning. And he did a series about 2 weeks ago on the 5 big secrets of successful people that people don't know. And 72 to either 3 days or 4 days later, you can't get that video anymore. And so I downloaded them all, right? I got them, so I'll give them to you, right? But one of the ones on there that I found very interesting is he says the most successful people on the planet have one thing in common. They are lazy. They are lazy. The other thing that he said is they have a lot of self-doubt. And they don't. The biggest fear they have is they're going to be found out. And this is like Richard Branson, Bill Gates, all of them. I'm like, I feel that way. Oh my God, I've arrived, right? And I'm thinking, am I the only one that's lazy? And he's like, no, every single one of them are lazy. And the reason they work their tail off for a short period of time towards a goal is so they can be lazy. Okay? So if you think about in real estate, what is your big goal? Wouldn't you like to get to a point where you have systems in place where all you got to do is show up and do the listing appointment, right? All you got to do is show up and do the paperwork with the buyer. And you have enough income coming in from your own real estate business to get the, let me keep this rated G here. You can get the assistants to do all the stuff you don't want to do, right? And so let's talk about how do you get there. Let's talk about mindset. And you can apply these 3 principles to anything you want to see an increase in life. Number 1 is when we talk about mindset, the mindset of a champion is that there's always room to grow. How many of you would agree with that statement? Okay. How many of you believe that you have potential inside of you to perform at a higher level than the level you've been performing at?
Yep.
Okay? Me too. And one of the best examples of mindset is the great Michael Jordan. Now, Michael Jordan was the greatest basketball player, in my opinion, of all time. And one of the things, in order to play in the NBA, you have to be a great athlete. We all agree with that, right? But what made this guy so different was his mindset and what he did to grow that mindset. And one of the things he did every single off season is he would go back. Now, back in the day, it was tape, right? Remember VHS and all that stuff, right? He would go back and watch hours and hours and hours of tape watching himself play basketball. Now, notice I said this. He watched himself playing basketball. He didn't watch the other people. He didn't watch Scottie Pippen. He didn't watch any of the other players. He watched himself, because one of the true secrets of a champion, and one of the true secrets of people that really succeed to those huge levels, they don't compare themselves to others. You know who they compare themselves to? Themselves. They compete against themselves yesterday. And their whole goal is to become better today than they were yesterday. And so one of the disciplines he developed to strengthen his mindset was to sit down and watch hundreds of hours of tape with a notepad, and he was just make notes. Hey, and make a list of, I want to work on this, I want to work on this, I want to work on this. And then he went through an exercise to dwindle it down to one thing. Not 10 things, not 20 things, one thing. And when he figured out what that one thing was, he went out and he got the coaches, the trainers, the books, the audios, whatever it is he needed to work for a solid off season on that one thing. True story. One year it was his left hand. That's all he did. The entire off season was his left hand. Next year it was his strength training. And it was that discipline that made Michael Jordan great. Now, if Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player of all time, has to do that, what does that mean for you and I? Right? So here's your homework. And on your sheet here, right? We're already at inner game action step, right? So here's what I want you to do. Here's your homework. We're in May. Go back over the last 4 months and take this time. Set an hour, 2 hours, half day if you will, and look back over everything that you did over the last 4 months. Watch your own tapes. Watch your own video, your own audio. Make a list. What is the one thing that if you actually focused on for the next 3 months, May, June, July, August if you're feeling ambitious, what is the one thing that if you literally focused on could be that tipping point in your game? And so once you figure that out, then what I want you to do is I want you to do 4 things. Okay? Nope, didn't write it, didn't make room for it. So you want to write this down. 4 things. Number 1 is I want you to go and find 5 books on the subject. Now, if you're like me, I got sick and tired of beating myself up for hating to read a physical book. And I thank God every day that somebody figured out how to put it on an audiobook. And so I'm like, wait, I am reading books. I'm listening to them. I digest that content so much better and I retain it more better and I'm able to regurgitate it a lot better because that's my mode of learning. And so find 5 books on the subject. Next, I want you to find either 3 audio or video programs on whatever that one thing is. And then find a webinar or workshop, some sort of workshop on that subject. And finally, if you don't have a coach, a mentor, somebody that has already been where you're wanting to go, somebody who can teach you and help you master whatever that one thing is, go and get them. And if they cost money, pay it. So not all mentors cost money. Okay? So, and then the discipline is this. Take a half hour every single